You want to know the exact moment everything shattered? It was over mashed potatoes and roasted chicken. My sister, sitting right across from me with that smug little smile she always wore when she was about to go for blood, leaned back in her chair, tilted her head like she was genuinely curious, and said it. "Where's your husband and kids, Riley?" "Oh right, you don't have any." And then she laughed. That sharp, cruel laugh that cut through the dining room like broken glass. But what really killed me, what really drove the knife deeper into my chest, was when my parents joined in. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, trying to hide her grin. My father chuckled into his wine glass. They laughed. At me, their daughter, the one who had been paying their mortgage for 3 years, the one who covered my sister's car payments when she got laid off, the one who canceled vacations, skipped meals, worked overtime until my hands shook from exhaustion, all so they could live comfortably. And they laughed. I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, my throat closing up, my vision blurring at the edges. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I just stared at them. These people I had sacrificed everything for, watching them mock the emptiness in my life that existed because I had filled theirs. The silence inside me was deafening. But then something shifted. Something cold and sharp slid into place where the hurt had been. I set my fork down slowly, very slowly, and I looked my sister dead in the eye. My voice came out calm, steady, almost sweet. "Where's your money?" "Oh right, you don't have any. I've been supporting you. Until today." The laughter died, just like that. The room went so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. My sister's smile slipped off her face like melted wax. My mother's eyes went wide. My father set his glass down, and I just sat there, watching them realize what I had just said, what I had just done. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I stopped being their safety net and started being a stranger. And honestly, I should have done it years ago. But if you've ever been the person everyone leans on, you know it's not that simple. You know that guilt wraps around you like chains, that love gets twisted into obligation until you can't tell the difference anymore. So let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you the whole ugly truth. My name is Riley. I'm 34 years old. I work in corporate finance, which sounds fancy until you realize it just means I spend 60 hours a week staring at spreadsheets and taking calls from people who think their problems are more important than my sanity. I live alone in a decent apartment in the city. No husband, no kids, no white picket fence. Just me, my coffee maker, and a growing collection of self-help books I keep buying but never read because I'm too exhausted. From the outside, I probably look successful, stable, independent. But inside, I've been drowning for years. It started small. My parents hit a rough patch when I was 26. My dad's business took a hit during the recession, and my mom's part-time job wasn't enough to cover their bills. They asked if I could help out, just temporarily, just until they got back on their feet. And of course I said yes, because that's what good daughters do, right? You help your family. You don't ask questions. You don't set boundaries. You just give and give and give until there's nothing left. So I helped. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they'd pay me back. I told myself it was love. But temporary turned into months. Months turned into years. And somewhere along the way, my help became their expectation. My money became their budget. My salary became their retirement plan. And I just let it happen. I let them take and take and take, because I was too afraid to say no, too afraid to disappoint them, too afraid to be the selfish daughter who turned her back on her struggling parents. So I worked harder. I took on extra projects. I skipped lunches. I wore the same clothes for years. I canceled plans with friends because I couldn't afford to go out after sending my parents their monthly check. And through it all, I told myself it was worth it. That they appreciated it. That they saw my sacrifice. But they didn't see it. They never saw it. To them, I was just Riley. Successful Riley. Stable Riley. Riley who has her life together, so of course she can afford to help. They never asked how I was doing. Never asked if I was okay. Never asked if the weight of supporting 3 adults was crushing me. They just took. And my sister? She was even worse. She's 2 years younger than me, and she spent her entire adult life bouncing from one disaster to another. Bad relationships, bad jobs, bad decisions. And every single time she crashed and burned, guess who was there to catch her? Me. I paid her rent when she got evicted. I covered her credit card debt when she maxed out 4 cards on clothes and vacations. I co-signed her car loan because no bank would trust her credit score. And did she ever say thank you? Did she ever acknowledge that I was the only reason she wasn't living in her car? No. She just smiled and asked for more. And the worst part, the part that makes my blood boil even now, is that they made me feel guilty for having more than them. Every time I mentioned work stress, my dad would say, "Well, at least you have a stable job." Every time I looked tired, my mom would say, "You should be grateful you can afford to work so hard." And my sister, God, my sister would roll her eyes and say, "Must be nice to have money, must be nice." As if I hadn't earned every single dollar. As if I hadn't sacrificed my 20s and 30s so they could coast through life without consequences. As if my success was luck and not the result of working myself to the bone while they sat on their couches and waited for my next deposit. And the husband and kids thing? That became their favorite weapon. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call, someone would bring it up. "When are you going to settle down, Riley? Don't you want a family? You're not getting any younger." As if I hadn't tried. As if I hadn't gone on dates with men who lost interest the second they realized I was too tired, too stressed, too stretched thin to invest in a relationship. As if I hadn't cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd spent so much time taking care of everyone else that I'd forgotten how to let someone take care of me. But they didn't care about that. They just cared about having another thing to judge me for. Another way to make me feel like I wasn't enough. Like my life wasn't real because it didn't look like theirs. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt like the person everyone takes from but nobody sees, hit that subscribe button. Because this story gets worse, before it gets better, and you're going to want to hear what happened next. The breaking point came 3 months before that dinner. I was sitting in my apartment on a Friday night, staring at my bank account. I had just gotten paid, and I should have felt relief, but instead, I felt sick, because I knew that by Monday, half of that paycheck would be gone. Rent for my parents, car payment for my sister, utilities, groceries, insurance, all of it coming out of my account, leaving me with just enough to survive until the next paycheck. And I realized, sitting there in the dark, with my laptop glowing in front of me, that I had been surviving for years. Not living, just surviving. I couldn't remember the last time I bought something for myself that wasn't essential, the last time I took a vacation, the last time I felt like my life belonged to me. And then I got a text from my sister. "Hey, can you cover my phone bill this month? I'm a little short." "No, please. No thank you in advance, just an expectation, an assumption." And something inside me just snapped. I stared at that text for 20 minutes, my hands shaking, my chest tight, and I felt this wave of rage crash over me. Years of rage, years of resentment, years of swallowing my feelings and playing the good daughter, and pretending like everything was fine when I was barely holding it together. And I thought, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I destroying myself for people who don't even see me as a person, just as a wallet? Why am I letting them take my life from me? I didn't answer the text. I opened a new document on my laptop, and I started writing down numbers. Every single dollar I had given them over the years. Rent payments, car payments, credit card bills, groceries, medical expenses, emergency loans that were never paid back. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, going through bank statements and receipts, adding it all up. And when I saw the final number, I felt like I was going to throw up. Over $200,000. $200,000 I had given them. That's a down payment on a house. That's a wedding. That's a future. That's a life. And I had handed it over piece by piece, thinking it was love, thinking it was family, thinking it made me a good person, but all it did was make me empty. That night, I made a decision. I was done. I wasn't going to send another check. I wasn't going to cover another bill. I wasn't going to light myself on fire to keep them warm anymore. I was going to tell them the truth. That I couldn't do this anymore. That I needed to take care of myself for once. That they needed to figure out their own lives because I was drowning in the weight of theirs. And I knew it was going to destroy everything. But I didn't care. Because the alternative was letting them destroy me. So I started pulling back. I didn't announce it. I didn't send some dramatic message. I just stopped. I didn't send the rent check. I didn't answer my sister's texts asking for money. I didn't pick up the phone when my parents called asking if the deposit had gone through. I just went silent. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. It was terrifying, and exhilarating, and heartbreaking all at once. Because I knew what was coming. I knew they weren't going to let this go quietly. And I was right. The calls started coming daily, then hourly. My mom left voicemails crying about how they were going to lose the house. My dad sent texts about how disappointed he was in me. My sister showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door, screaming about how selfish I was. And every message, every call, every guilt trip just proved what I had suspected all along. They didn't love me. They loved what I could give them. And the second I stopped giving, I stopped mattering. But I held firm. I didn't answer. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself, because I knew that nothing I said would change their minds. They would never see me as anything other than the person who owed them. So I let them rage. I let them spiral. And I waited for the inevitable confrontation. The one I knew was coming. The one that happened at that dinner. They invited me over under the pretense of wanting to talk, to work things out. My mom said she missed me, that we needed to reconnect as a family, and like an idiot, I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe her. Maybe some part of me still hoped that they would finally see me, finally understand what they had done, finally apologize. So I went. I showed up with a bottle of wine and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But the second I walked in, I felt it. The tension, the resentment, the trap. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about punishment. My sister's smug smile, my parents' cold politeness, the way they watched me like I was the enemy. And I knew, sitting down at that table, that this was going to end badly. I just didn't know it would end with my sister mocking the deepest wound I carried. The loneliness, the emptiness, the life I didn't have, because I had been too busy funding theirs. When she said it, when she threw that question at me like a weapon, I felt every year of pain, every ounce of sacrifice, every moment of invisible suffering rise up in my throat. And when my parents laughed, when they chose her cruelty over my dignity, something inside me just shut down. The part of me that loved them, the part that still cared, it just died, right there at the dinner table. And what was left was anger. Pure, cold, righteous anger. So I said it. I laid it out. I told them exactly where their money came from, exactly who had been keeping them afloat, and exactly when it was ending. Today, right now, no more checks. No more bailouts. No more sacrificing myself for people who saw me as nothing more than a resource. And watching their faces change, watching the realization hit them that they had just destroyed the only person keeping them above water, it should have felt good. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. It just felt sad. Because I realized in that moment that I had wasted years loving people who were never going to love me back. Not really. Not the way I needed. My sister tried to backtrack. She stuttered something about it being a joke, that I was too sensitive, that I was overreacting. My mother reached for my hand, her eyes filling with tears, suddenly acting like she cared. My father started talking about family, about loyalty, about how we don't turn our backs on each other. And I just looked at them, really looked at them, and I saw them clearly for the first time. Not as my family, not as people I owed, just as strangers, who had used me up, and expected me to be grateful for it. I stood up, I picked up my purse, and I walked out. No yelling, no crying, no explanation. I just left. And as I drove away from that house, the house I had paid for, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. It hurt. God, it hurt. But underneath the pain was this fierce, burning relief. Because I was finally done. Finally free. Finally choosing myself. The weeks after were brutal. They tried everything. Guilt, anger, manipulation. My mom sent me long emails about how much they had sacrificed raising me. My dad threatened to cut me out of the will, as if there was anything left to inherit. My sister spread lies to extended family, painting me as the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned her struggling parents. And for a while, I let it get to me. I questioned myself. I wondered if I was wrong, if I was cruel, if I should have just kept quiet and kept giving. But then I looked at my bank account. I looked at my calendar. I looked at my life. And I realized that for the first time in years, it was mine. My money was mine. My time was mine. My future was mine. And no amount of guilt could make me give that up again. I started therapy. I started rebuilding. I started investing in myself the way I had invested in them. I paid off my own debts. I saved for my own future. I took a vacation, a real vacation, and I didn't feel guilty about it. I went on dates without the weight of exhaustion crushing me. I made friends, real friends, who saw me as more than a wallet. And slowly, painfully, I started to heal. The anger didn't go away, not completely, but it transformed. It became fuel. It became boundaries. It became the voice inside me that said, never again. Never again will I let someone take from me without giving back. Never again will I confuse obligation with love. Never again will I set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. I haven't spoken to them since that night. They stopped reaching out after a few months. I heard through distant relatives that they had to downsize, that my sister moved back in with my parents, that they were struggling, and I felt nothing, no guilt, no sadness, just a distant, detached acknowledgement that they were finally facing the consequences of their choices. The consequences I had protected them from for so long. And maybe that makes me cold. Maybe that makes me heartless. But I don't care anymore. Because I spent years caring about people who never cared about me. And I'm done with that. I'm done apologizing for choosing myself. I'm done feeling guilty for having boundaries. I'm done letting people tell me that self-respect is selfish. So here's what I want you to hear. If you're watching this, and you're the person everyone leans on, the person everyone takes from, the person who gives and gives, until there's nothing left, listen to me. You are not obligated to destroy yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You are not selfish for having limits. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. And you are not alone. Because I see you, I was you, and I'm telling you, from the other side of that pain, that it gets better. It hurts first. It hurts like hell, but then it gets better. Because you start to remember who you are underneath all that guilt and obligation. You start to build a life that's actually yours. And you start to understand that real love, true love, doesn't demand everything and give nothing back. I don't regret walking away. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret the years I wasted, the money I gave, the life I postponed. But I don't regret choosing myself, not for a second, because that night at the dinner table, when my sister mocked me, and my parents laughed, they showed me exactly who they were, and I finally believed them. I finally stopped making excuses. I finally stopped pretending that if I just gave a little more, sacrificed a little more, they would finally see me. Because people who love you don't need you to bleed to prove your worth. They don't laugh at your pain. They don't take until there's nothing left. Real family, real love, sees you, honors you, protects you, and anything less than that isn't love. It's just exploitation, dressed up in guilt and obligation. So, if you've ever been in my position, if you've ever carried your family at your own expense, I want you to ask yourself something. What line did you draw? Where did you say enough? Or are you still there, still giving, still hoping that one day they'll appreciate you? Because they won't. Not until you stop. Not until you show them that your love, your help, your sacrifice has conditions. That you matter too. That your life, your dreams, your future, are just as important as theirs. And if that makes you the bad guy in their story, so be it. Because in your story, the only one that actually matters, you're the hero, the survivor, the one who finally chose herself. That dinner was the worst night of my life, and the best decision I ever made. It broke me open and set me free all at once, and I wouldn't change it. Not the pain, not the betrayal, not the loneliness that followed. Because it led me here. To a life that's mine, to peace that's real, to a future that's finally within my reach. And if my story resonates with you, if you've felt this pain, carried this weight, survived this betrayal, then do me a favor, share this. Comment below, tell me your story. Let's build a community of people who chose themselves and refuse to apologize for it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep this conversation going, because you deserve to be seen, you deserve to be heard, and you deserve a life that doesn't require you to disappear.